Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the channel. I am Brian Lusk. Thank you for joining me today. Glad to have you here. And we've got a little bit of a lighter day today, in theory at least. A little bit lighter today compared to yesterday where we had a whole bunch of stuff going on. Even so, we've got some things that we need to discuss about Ukraine. But as we wait for people to go ahead and get logged in here and get signed in, I wanted to just kind of share something real quick that I thought was very interesting. Back in the early 1940s, Charles Lindbergh was part of an America First committee that said, and I'll just let his own words speak for him here. So let's go ahead and flip this over here.
And I have been forced to the conclusion that we cannot win this war for England regardless of how much assistance we send. That is why the America First Committee has been formed.
And yet when Charles Lindbergh, after Pearl Harbor and the U.S. came into the war fully, Charles Lindbergh was a patriot in the sense that he served. He went as a civilian advisor. In fact, they wouldn't let him officially join the fight. And he actually wanted to get into combat. And as I recall, he came in as a civilian contractor to kind of help guide the aviators and help them to get the most out of their airplanes. He actually went on several combat sorties with the troops until the government found out about it and they clipped his wings, per se, pulled him back out. They did not want to have the risk of having an American hero shot down in this war, have him lost in this war. So the idea behind this, and the reason I'm even bringing this up, is that in many cases, people who are making, I believe, good faith arguments in these types of situations. However, that doesn't make them correct. And when the circumstances change, they're willing to go that extra mile and actually make the change necessary to support their country and do what is right in the end. So that was my little kind of starting thought for today. Let's go ahead and get right into the some of the most important news, which I've kind of pulled out of the whole thing and put together for us here. We'll start off with Polish truckers again are at it one more time, and today they are actually shutting down the entire border with Ukraine. The President Zelensky responded to this as, what is happening on our western border, the border with Poland, cannot be perceived as something normal or ordinary. We need simple and clear justice. Only 5% of our agricultural exports pass through the Polish border. So, in fact, the situation is not in grain, but rather in politics. And near Kupiansk, not far from the border with Russia, where the enemy artillery does not stop, the news from the border with Poland looks simply mocking. Joint decisions, rational decisions, are needed to get out of this situation. Our decisions are primarily with the Poles and everyone in Europe who is concerned about the fate of Europe. They have, this is some information from last night from them, and I've gotten some additional information this morning, which I don't have pulled up. Apparently, they've gone ahead and stopped the 6 major crossings and the rail crossing between Ukraine and Poland. There's military assistance waiting in line to get through. There's a lot of things that are being stopped by this. But over on that train line, apparently, when the train had to stop, they then went and started emptying one of the grain cars, dumping it out. And after the situation over with the trucks, where they did something similar, it's, I think this is being agitated. That's my personal opinion, is that this is being agitated. And it's the fingers of Moscow are in the middle of this. So that's the situation there. They're deliberately pushing the buttons. And they're deliberately pushing the buttons they know are going to cause the most pain and friction. So that's the situation over there with the Polish farmers yet again. They have now shut down the border with Ukraine once more. The next big bit of news, though, is the Russian pilot who defected to Ukraine. Well, he didn't want to stay in Ukraine, so he moved on with his life and moved over to Spain, where he lived for a little while here, and he has been found dead. Initially, there was thought that it was somebody else, but as the details have come out and the news has managed to catch up, we've started to get some more details. He was found dead in a parking lot. A burnt car was found nearby, and he was shot, I believe, 5 or 6 times. The thing is that as we've looked into it further, he invited his ex from his previous relationships. He invited her over. And about the time he was supposed to meet with her, he was found shot dead with that burnt car nearby. So it really looks like a targeted hit that was specifically for him. There's no other clear cause for it. And it looks like they got to the ex, and when he invited her over, well, I don't know if it was her that pulled the trigger or not, but that's the situation there. The overall, again, it's clear that if you're going to if you're going to be a man like this, where you are defecting to the other side, you're going to have a whole different level of operational security that goes beyond what you could do previously. You can't just you got to leave your whole previous life behind. Moving over to the news out of Ukraine, there's not a lot today, but I thought this was interesting. Ukraine frontline medics have brought a damaged ambulance from Kharkiv to the UK to demonstrate what kinds of things are happening in Ukraine. They say there's been nearly 500 ambulances either destroyed, damaged, or seized by the Russians. That is a lot of civilian equipment, and it's clear that they're targeting it. It's not just by accident. This advertisement, shared by Jason J. Smart of the Kiev Post, is really, I think it's a bit heart-wrenching. It talks about post-traumatic stress and the amount of work Ukraine's going to have to do with its veterans after the war. It shows, obviously, this soldier who's back to civilian life, but still always in that military mindset. And it's darn powerful. When all this is said and done, there's going to be a tremendous amount that's going to have to be done to help out the veterans of this war. They're going to be dealing with the consequences of this for the rest of their lives. The pains and the pains and troubles of war. Moving over to news out of Russia. Actually, before I do, I'll take a quick look at the comments here. Looks like Ozzy is saying his nephew in Australia told him that there was a vigil for Navalny in Melbourne today. And he says we need to encourage Russians to be brave. Absolutely. Otherwise, there's not going to be an end to the continuous wars that are coming out of Russia. So, moving on to the Russian news here. Members of Ukraine's underground observed the arrival of new Russian troops in Zankoy in occupied Crimea. Some of them were wearing the Wagner insignia. So it looks like we're starting to see more of those troops rotating back into service in Ukraine. There was an explosion at a metallurgical plant in Balakovo. According to preliminary data, somebody was smoking near some explosive cylinders. They're really good about smoking in places they shouldn't over in Russia. 3 people were injured, and the wounded were hospitalized in serious condition. Overall, it makes me wonder if this was a sabotage or if it really was just an accident. One of the offices of United Russia, the political party of Vladimir Putin, was set ablaze. This was done in memory of Navalny, according to the partisan who threw the cocktails. This little bit of video, I'm going to back this up here and mute it again. According to Russian media, this man was an SBU agent who was in disguise planting a bomb under a car and was later eliminated during his arrest. Strange that there is a camera crew and SWAT team that just happens to be sitting there watching this whole situation. So the implication being that, is this actually just a staged bit here that they wanted to capture and pretend that this was a Ukrainian agent? Either way, it's interesting to watch, and you can see the SWAT team going in after the man. So interesting to watch. In occupied Makiivka, an oil depot is on fire after a Ukrainian attack on the facility. In my understanding, it was done with drones, and it was and caught the facility on fire. This was yesterday, so I don't know exactly how much damage was done overall. And that's everything out of Russia. Like I said, today is going to be a little bit of a short one today, just because of the I wouldn't say lack of news, but because the amount of actually important things that were there is a little bit lower than normal today, and I'm okay with that. It's a nice, it's good to be not quite as busy sometimes. Over on the international front, Canada is sending over 800 Skyranger R-70 multi-mission unmanned aerial systems to Ukraine. This totals out for $95 million worth of drones, and should be really effective. Ukraine has made tremendous use of these drones overall, and they're going to find some interesting extra things they can do with that. In fact, I think I've got a video a little bit later about a little drone fight going on, so we'll see if we can find that when we get there. Ukraine is working with SpaceX to disable Russia's use of Starlink on the front lines, according to Ukraine's digital transformation minister. They're looking to find a solution to get those Starlink terminals disabled in the temporarily occupied territories. Overall, it looks like Russia has been buying those Starlink terminals from Arab countries and then bringing them already activated into position in Ukraine. There is discussion of additional sanctions on Russia over Navalny's death. In 2021, Biden claimed that whatever the response was would be devastating. However, this really doesn't seem to have panned out once it actually happened. We'll be watching this to see if anything actually comes out of that. Alternatively, they're looking at providing Ukraine with long-range ATACMS missiles. This would be the ones that have 300-kilometer range and would therefore put all of Crimea into operational missile range of these ATACMS missiles. Japan's ponying up $12.1 billion in aid to Ukraine. Now, they did not say whether this was military or just reconstruction aid. Either way, that's Japan coming up and helping out. Really good of them to do so. They have become quite the partners on the world stage for Ukraine. Estonian Prime Minister Kaja Kallas, which I'm sure I've mispronounced, said the West should seize Russia's frozen assets before the U.S. election. She said, "Elections are always turbulent times. It's always better to do everything we can before important elections." This is honestly, if you can get these things resolved and out of the way so that it's not an issue during the election, it's actually better so that people can focus on the issues that actually matter to their country. Sweden is setting up the largest military support package to Ukraine to date for them, worth 7.1 billion Swedish kroners, or 683 million US dollars. In fact, I did see that somebody had reported what that was going to be made of this morning when I was kind of quickly scanning. Let's see if I can quickly find it here for you. I think it was on Knoll Reports here. Oh, brief pause here. This is talking about the Polish farmers dumping the Ukrainian grain off of the rail cars. So, just there you go. Let me go ahead and continue on down here. Pretty sure. There we go. It will include artillery, ammunition, air defense systems, the RBS 70s, anti tank missiles or TOWs, hand grenades, Carl Gustaf grenade launchers, medical supplies, and economic aid for weapons procurement, such as the CV-90. They're also going to contribute 10 CB-90 combat boats, 20 group boats, and underwater weapons joining the Maritime Coalition. So that's what Sweden's providing in their defense aid package. So good on Sweden for getting up. Tyndar reported, as of last night late, that there might have been a breakthrough on the Taurus missiles. Government parties have agreed to send the motion for a parliament vote on a new military aid package containing long-range weapons. They didn't specifically mention Taurus, but it's really pretty obviously the core of the new package. Voting should take place this week. And they report that the reason this is happening is because of Navalny's murder. They're ready to support the bill, they're appalled by it, and they want to send a message to Putin that he can't just be bumping off all of his opposition like he's been doing for the last, 20 years or more. So there we go. That's everything on the international front. Let's go ahead and flow right into the front lines here. This story right here, I have had to research this one multiple times now to make sure it's valid, and I finally got enough details to have a reasonable certainty on this. When the troops at Zenit Strongpoint were preparing to pull out, they had some men that were too injured to be evacuated with them in the rushed and, well, not rushed, but the tight and troublesome evacuation that they were going to have to take out. The Ukrainians called a coordination hotline with Russia. They told them they were pulling out of the Zenit Point, that they were leaving behind. Pardon me for a second. I got to turn off our radio. Sorry about that. Anyway, so they called this coordination hotline with Russia. They said they were going to be pulling out of the Zenith Point, and there were going to be some wounded soldiers there. And they arranged for them to get, basically to take them out of there, to get them the necessary medical treatment, and then later arrange a prisoner swap for them. Instead, the Russians shot him, the wounded. And that there's actually video of that happening out there, which I will not be sharing today. The overall situation on the front lines has really not changed a whole lot compared to previous days. The big advance, at least as far as the deep state map goes, is right here. Outside of Avdiivka, near Lostochkiny. And it looks like the Russians have moved up the tree line a little bit to get a little bit farther in. There's some additional map updates that we'll be going through in just a moment here. This is the only one of note on the deep state map. The Russian army is currently attempting to advance in 5 main directions: Avdiivka, Marinka, Robotna, Kreminna, and Bakhmut, all of which should sound familiar because they were all hot spots in the previous summer and fall, where they were, in all cases, constant fighting in those areas. So if they're working these areas, what they're trying to do is take advantage of Ukraine's ammunition shortages, the fact that they actually pulled back from Avdiivka. They're hoping this means that there will be communication issues and disorder on the Ukrainian side. They may not have gotten what they hoped for. West of Robotna, Russian forces tried to make their way into the town. However, the town was not seized, contrary to some reports. The group of Russians that landed in the trenches on the outskirts were captured, and there is video evidence of that capture happening. And here is that video evidence now that we're here. You can see the Ukrainians taking the Russians out of the trench that they had managed to get into and moving them back into basically taking them prisoner. My heavens, that whole area has been flattened. This one, I've got some interesting stuff to share with you. From War Gonzo, the vampire that fired at Belgorod was destroyed. They say that coming from the Belgorod border area, there a few days ago, operators from the Grom Kaskad discovered a Czech MLRS vampire firing at Belgorod. After detection, the multiple launch rocket system was struck using a tactical missile system. So let's take a look at the video that they provided. I'm going to have some comments on this as we speak. So here's that video. If you watch carefully, you can see right up in here the explosion area right there. In the foreground, you'll see kind of a curved city formation there. And that straight shoreline right there is pretty distinctive. So I spent a little bit working on geolocating this. But you can see this is not a close video. It's not like they had it zoomed in on something. So we have no clue exactly what they hit in this attack. But let's go ahead and take a look at where I geolocated this to. Here is the map of basically northeastern Ukraine right on the Russian border. You can see right here this straight shoreline. In fact, let me get this where I can actually draw for a little bit here. You can see right here this straight shoreline. And if you look carefully, you'll see that kind of curved residential area right here. And there was a whole bunch of residential area along in here that you could see in the video, just in front of the explosion site, meaning that I'm pegging the actual location somewhere in about this circle here. So it's just south of this reservoir here. Now that we got all those details, and there's a reason I wanted to show you this, because we're going to zoom out a little bit and show you Belgorod, which is right here. So let's go ahead and circle these real fast here. Here is Belgorod. And this here, down here in blue, is about where that launcher or that strike was taking place. Let's go ahead and measure the distance here between just south of this reservoir here to the very edge of Belgorod. And if you look carefully, you'll see it's about 23 kilometers, 23.67 miles, or 38 kilometers from that position to Belgorod. The Vampire MLRS system, the Czech Vampire MLRS system, has a 20-kilometer max range. So they were not firing from this position at Belgorod itself. That's the reason why I did that quick geolocation to figure out what was going on. There'll probably be official data on that coming out soon, but I thought it was really interesting. Not very often I sit here and effectively, I wouldn't say debunk, but call out the situation personally, but I thought it was an important context to add. And that's kind of the situation on the front lines. We only had the couple of changes. Fighting is fierce right now. There's that 5 areas. In fact, let me just pull that back up here. These 5 areas where the Russians are trying to take advantage of the situation and make the most of it. They want to get as much done as they can before the mud hits so they can spend the time of the mud season actually securing their gains, building defensive fortifications, minefields, etc. And that's kind of the long story short of what's going on in Ukraine. I've got some extras here that you might find interesting. Let's go ahead and jump in on these. I'm going to mute this audio because the audio is probably copyrighted material there. And back it up. You'll see here a Ukrainian first-person view drone engaging in a dogfight with a Russian fixed-wing drone. And he takes the first pass to try and get to it, and then comes around for another pass to try and get the airplane, the plane-style fixed-wing drone. He's got it in his sight. And he manages a direct hit on the left wing, causing his, of course, his his display to go static because he just exploded on that fixed-wing drone. We're seeing effectively dogfights in the sky using drones these days. Fascinating to see going on. I'm just waiting for one side to stick a small rifle on there or something like that. Start shooting bullets at other airplanes and things like that to shoot them down. Outside of the war in Ukraine for a moment, China is offering backing to Hungary in security matters and law enforcement. There's been a series of protests in Hungary lately. So China, who knows really well how to crack down on a good protest, is offering to give them some assistance because they don't want Orban's situation to be weakened in that regard. Other news outside of Ukraine as well. The Houthis have announced a new attack on a merchant ship, with the crew having to evacuate, and they've claimed it sunk, though at this point we don't know that for sure. The bulk carrier Ruby Mar had to abandon ship after an attack in the Gulf of Aden, for which the Houthis claimed responsibility. There was another ship nearby that took off the crew. My understanding is there were no injuries to the crew themselves, just to the ship itself. It was reported as dead in the water near the shore of near Yemen. In that same vein, the Houthis also report downing an MQ-9 Reaper drone with one of their surface-to-air missiles. No surprise there. The Reaper drones are not exactly highly defensible platforms, and they're subsonic, well subsonic. So it's going to be pretty easy for a surface-to-air missile to take one down. Kind of something more of a positive note here. These rescuers are on the frontline city of Kramatorsk, which was heavily shelled by Russia. They weren't just saving people, though, and if you watch carefully here, after a bit of digging into this rubble, they pull a cat out of the rubble. Poor thing was just buried under there. The owner was still alive, and they took the cat to the owner and reunited them. So just a little bit of good news. And it's always fascinating to me how the Ukrainians will put in that extra effort to save even the least among us. I was intending to put this before here, but apparently I got it tacked on at the end here. More world news here. Kosovo's defense minister is reporting there an enormous deployment of Serbian brigades on their border with Kosovo, with 48 operational bases of the Serbian army located 300 meters to 5 kilometers from the border. The situation in Serbia and Kosovo is gradually getting worse, and we're seeing the situation deteriorate before our very eyes. And that's everything for today. Let me know what you think of everything going on in the comments. There's a lot of things going on right now, and I'm trying to kind of make sure there's more world context as well in my reports, because a lot of these things, there's knock-on effects from the fact that Russia's invasion of Ukraine has not been stopped. Seeing it continue on like it is, we need to be ever vigilant and try our best to support and defend the right people and keep the innocent safe. If you enjoyed today's video, hit me with that old thumbs up. I appreciate everyone for being here. Ozzy, I especially appreciate your comments. Always appreciated. And thanks for being up and being a night owl where you are. Y'all have a great rest of your day. We'll see you on the next video.